preferences? What do we read? How do we prefer to read? What sort of research and statistics are there about what people are reading and how they're reading them, or how they're reading books? Because it's a very interesting sort of thing. You know, how are we reading these days? Let's maybe start with the first question of this. Well, first, did you guys get a chance to read the articles and watch the video?
As I understand, there was 3 articles because I can't find a video and third link.
Okay.
Yes, I have it.
Okay, so we've got the material there. That's great. In that case, let's start with you, Denise. Are you an active reader? Do you consider yourself to be someone who is reading on a regular basis?
Yes, of course. That was one of the keys why I choose such topic. My reading have probably 3 different directions. First, it's of course reading professional materials because technology grows very fast, and usually I should getting new information, ideas, methodologies, or something other thing. And usually it's impossible to find in a short articles, so it's important to read some key books for each spheres. Next, it's reading books for pleasure, reading some simple modern books, and also sometimes trying to read some classic books or philosophy books to find some new ideas to grow my mind. So yes.
Okay, that's great. I mean, it's a great topic, and you're definitely really into reading, which is always a good thing to hear. Elia, what about you? Oh, wait, do we have Irina? Irina, are you here?
Hello.
Hi, Irina. Nice to see you or to hear you.
I didn't hear the question.
Oh, okay. Well, it's fine. It's fine. Welcome to Conversation Club. The question that we're asking, first question that we're going to do and talking about reading and our preferences. Are you an avid reader? Do you like to read?
Yeah, I like reading.
Okay. All right. Like, on a regular basis, when you have time, what's your reading situation?
Oh, my reading situation. I haven't got such much time, free time, because I have my little son. He's 2 years old, and so I can read when he sleeps. Maybe when he has got a nap or at night.
Okay, that's great. Elia, what about you? Are you an avid reader?
Yes, I'm active reader, but during the latest period, I'm not so active because there are lots of video information nowadays. But I prefer reading. So I don't know whether it's good or bad, but for me it is difficult to participate audio and video information. I prefer reading because it is really convenient, and I understood it while feeding the children. Yes, by the way, when the child likes to feed for an hour, for example, you've got that very hour to read a book, and yes, just to read the book. And mostly they were electronic books, because you can read the books on your telephone or laptop, or just a special electronic book, and it is rather convenient in such situation.
Okay, what was that feedback there? Or I don't know what that was. It was a very strange sound. But yeah, no, I mean, it's great. I, too, enjoy reading very much. I don't read maybe as much as I'd like to, just because I'm busy with many other things. And I know that, for example, when I used to live in Moscow or even Los Angeles, and I was riding public transportation to get to work, school, or whatever you have there, you know, I would have the time to open a book and to read, or an e-reader and read from that standpoint. Whereas now maybe it's at the end of the day when there's some free time, you know, if there's not something else that needs to be done in the meantime. But no, I definitely enjoy reading books. I like fiction probably more than anything else, although reading nonfiction is also interesting. I find it to be more of a reference sort of type reading. So I enjoy reading articles or encyclopedias or something like that if it comes to getting information, rather than reading someone else's interpretation of something. But it's my personal preference. But I really do enjoy fiction, specifically historical fiction, which, you know, different time periods are very interesting. But I think that a lot of good authors out there are able to capture a lot from different periods, and it's really interesting to read. And I prefer that to watching most films. Just, I don't know why, but anyway, I do like reading very much. So the next question that we have for today is, what format do you prefer when you read books? Maybe let's start with you, Irina. What format do you prefer? Do you prefer to read print books or electronic books, or maybe on your computer? Or, I mean, what do you prefer?
Mm-hmm. I don't like electronic books actually, because I like the sense of reading books when you are very attending the book and turning other pages. You can sense, you can touch your book, and of course I like reading with my, no, I don't know, with my red pen, and especially when it is such learning books, such articles maybe, and yeah, I like reading books in an old way. I like printed books.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Denise, what about you? How do you prefer? What format book do you prefer?
I prefer different formats for different tasks. So some books, I have a set of books, technology or I don't know, novel books, which I read no more than one time, and I periodically I returned and read some interesting parts, or searching for useful information for me, or taking some new ideas. So for such books, I prefer paper books, of course, because reading paper books is a more slow process, and you have more freedom to think about something, to stop at the eventual at moment you want. For fiction books or for mystery novels, I prefer electronic books, because it's more times useful in public transport, or you can continue reading everywhere from your mobile phone, for example.
Yeah.
For some, simple books, and even for sometimes I also print some materials. It's not about book, it's some specification for works or some interesting articles. I prefer paper books if I want to think more than read about what I'm trying to read.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's a very interesting point. If you want to think more, you want the paper book. That's an interesting way to look at it. Elia, what about you? What format book do you prefer?
I personally prefer, of course, printed books. Especially, I adore beautiful printed books. Mm, because I like that very smell of the paper, and I know that everything connected with printing. But sometimes, in some cases, electronic books are very useful, I think, and the only possibility to to read something very fast and to use the time you have.
Yeah, good points, absolutely good points. I personally prefer to read print books, but you know, I have just left behind so many books as I've moved from place to place that it doesn't really seem like such a practical solution to have print books. And this is why nowadays I really do use a lot of electronic books. And I know that I had purchased a few from one major online bookseller, I guess you would call it that. I don't want to give any names or anything like that. But what I learned a couple of years ago was that there are libraries that actually have databases, access to databases where you can borrow electronic books. And so you can basically use your e-reader like a library book. So, you know, you don't have to necessarily pay money, which I think is something that I psychologically have a bit of a problem with, paying for something that I don't physically have. I mean, if I pay, let's say, $10 for a book, I can hold that book as I'm reading it and physically, you know, have that connection. Whereas if it's a digital edition that I've purchased, I don't really have that. Yes, I can see it. Yes, I can read it, but you know, I can't put it on my shelf at the end of the day. And I guess for me, as someone who loves books and who likes to read books and who likes to share books, you know, the electronic option is kind of strange and not quite the same thing. Although I can say that I really like the fact that I don't have to worry about the clutter and moving books, because those can get very, very heavy. However, I can't read an electronic book at, say, the beach or something like that, which we'll get, you know, to those sort of things in a bit. But yeah, I think that I prefer print books, but I use electronic books. So I really don't know if that answers the question or not. I think it does. Okay, the next question that we have is, what do you think are the advantages of ebooks and the disadvantages? Let's go with you, Elia. We've touched on it a bit, but let's maybe just kind of break it down. Advantages, disadvantages.
I'm not sure, but I think that ebooks more dangerous for the eyes, and you get tired quicker while reading ebooks. And from this point of view, of course, print books are, I think, more user-friendly and health-friendly, if we can say so. So that's what I think just now about advantages and disadvantages of these two variants of books.
Okay, those are very good points. Very good points. The eye strain with the ebooks is definitely something to think about. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Okay, Irina, what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of electronic books?
I think the most important is the weight of ebooks, because you don't need to carry with you a lot of print books, and it is very it is easy to move and to take it with you, because for example, as for me, I personally can read simultaneously 2 or more books. And that's why when I go somewhere for 2 or more days, it is a little bit difficult to take 3 books with me, and so ebooks is better in this situation. But what's about disadvantages? As I said, I like touching the book when I read a book, and I like the situation when I sit with my cup of tea or coffee and there is a book I like, and it is perfect situation. And no one ebook can compare with print book in this situation.
Okay, all right. Denise, what about you? Advantages and disadvantages of I'm sorry, and disadvantages of electronic books.
Yes. For me, one of the most advantages of electronic books is different interactive features, because most of ebook reader have, for example, vocabulary integration, so I can read a book on English and have a very simple access to word translation, and to memorize some of them and study it later. So it's very hard to organize with a paper book, because you should have a dictionary, you should book, you should write words somewhere and organize all of this stuff well. So for ebooks, it's very simple and easy. Another advantage is, of course, is accessibility and compactness, if I can say it that way, because I can preserve numerous of books on my phone and then read it in any situation, even if no internet access or other, and it's all placed in one device. Also, some professional books have 1,500 of pages, so it's like a big brick, and it's not comfortable to take it away from home, even in backpack. About disadvantages is, yes, of course, reading of print books is a different perception and different feelings. I don't know how to explain it well, because it's some kind of materialized knowledge or materialized feeling or something about this, and it's more weight. It's hard to read some well packed by information or ideas book or on electronic device. I usually try to read it very fast and skip many important things.
Yes, okay, that's a very interesting point you make. I really like the point that you made with the dictionary, the looking up dictionary. It reminds me of something that happened, maybe I think it was last year, that I was reading a paper book and I stuck my finger on a word and I just held it down, waiting for the definition to pop up. And of course it didn't happen because it was a paper book, but still, from reading all the electronic books that I had been just basically really kind of used to pressing on a word to get the definition, which is a very convenient thing, as you mentioned, very convenient. Again, like what I had mentioned is that you're able to transport your library wherever you are. You don't have to worry about exorbitant shipping costs if you're going to relocate with books, which are quite high. What else is there? It's the fact that you can read, like you were saying, Denise, like, in different languages. You're able to access those libraries. You don't have to be in the country, where a book is published in a certain language. You can find it, you can download it, you can purchase it. All these different options are available, which is really, really great. Especially for someone who maybe knows several languages, it gives you that option, and it's, quite nice to have that option. Disadvantages, like, you were mentioning, some of you guys were mentioning, it's like not having that physical thing, that paper, that sort of thing. And the fact that you do kind of read differently. I guess that, as Elia was mentioning too, your eyes and everything else, what kind of stress are those e-readers putting on your eyes, or the screens? Because of course, I'm sure you're aware, there are different types of electronic book readers. There are, of course, devices that are designed specifically for reading text, and they've been optimized to be as close to paper as they possibly can be, which, is quite something. But there, of course, are other options, which are more like having a tablet or a mobile phone. And that kind of screen is much different when it comes to reading. And I think that does put more strain on your eyes. Although, you know, people have been complaining. I don't know if you guys remember growing up, you know, maybe your grandma said or mom said, oh, you're reading too much, you're going to ruin your eyes, get some fresh air or something like that. You know, maybe, or, you know, those sort of things too, because if you are focusing on one thing, you know, that does put the strain on the eyes, I think, regardless. But definitely the screens are something that your eyes are focusing on differently than they are paper. And as you, Irina, were mentioning with writing things down, taking notes, that sort of stuff is also something you kind of lose out on because it's really not the same on the screen. Let's think. Okay, I think we can go to the next one because we've pretty much covered the advantages of print books within that last question. What about the cover of a book? More specifically, a print book, because you really don't get the covers in the same sort of feel with digital editions. Although sometimes you can, if you've got a color screen, you can see the cover in your library. But do you judge books by their covers? Denise, do you judge books by their covers? That's a very popular idiom expression in English. Don't judge a book by its cover, which basically means, you know, the content can be completely different than what you see on the outside. It means that just because something is beautiful on the outside doesn't mean that something is beautiful on the inside. Likewise, just if something is not beautiful on the outside, it means that it might very well be beautiful on the inside. But I mean, that's more of the figurative sense. In the literal sense, I think it is very kind of relevant, at least to what we're talking about. When you choose to read a book, if you're at a bookstore or something like that, do you judge the book by its cover? Do you purchase based upon what it looks like? Denise, let's start with you.
Interesting questions. I never think about selection of a book or choosing a book for read. Do I think and judge it for its color? Because usually I choose book by author or by topic or I even know something before, listen before from anybody. But now, yes, because when I choose a paper book, I usually prefer to find a book with a good with a hardcover, of course, and with a classic cover. So, on such case, yes, I judge a book for its colors. Sometimes, when I was a student, there is no so many devices for reading a book, and I usually I buy many books with soft colors. And now I have some prejudgment that books with a soft color is bad books. But it's not about content, but it's more about feeling, about perception of this book. So in such case, yes, I prefer books with hard and good designed colors.
Okay.
But it's more about, yes, it's more about a book as an object, not a book as an information idea.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting. Irina, what about you? Do you choose to read books based upon what they look like on the outside? Since you are such a fan of the physical book itself, I mean, it's interesting. How much of that does it influence? How much of that influences what you choose to read?
It's definitely about me because I like judging books by their covers. No, of course, it depends on the situation because as I heard about this book earlier, of course, I will choose it. I will go to the shop or I don't know, website, and I will choose it by the name of the book, by the title of the book. But I like going to bookshops or to the library, and of course, there I usually choose books firstly by their covers, and then I take this book and of course I read read about the main idea of this book. And of course it depends on the kind of book I would like to choose, and especially when I'm looking for some fiction books, I judge by the cover. Yes. Maybe I'm a visual type of a person.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the experience. It's part of the overall book experience, which is, I think, why, as we will get to in a bit, why, if you guys read the material, you see that these ebooks aren't really maintaining that hold. You know, they took off, and yet it's still print books. It seemed to be what people prefer. So maybe that's part of it, you know, what they look like. And yeah, what about you? Do you judge a book by its cover?
Of course I do. Although I haven't got such sense of ownership of the books as you, Daniel. But for me, that print books, they're very important. It's very important for me. Yes, that very smell, as I mentioned, the smell of the paper, the quality of its binding, and the cover, of course, and even the design of the book. And if there are some pictures, especially if it is some good illustrated edition or some book for children, I think it is very important, and I pay much attention to that. And I should say that I'm very fond of every kind of stationery in general, and also office supplies. So, and if to talk about books and the quality of the books, yes, that is very important for me, because um, I love good printed books.
Okay, that's great. I do too. And I definitely am guilty of judging books by their cover. And this is, I think, part of like what, you know, Irina was talking about specifically, is that it's nice, you know, to be able to hold that and to see that, and to have, you know, it's kind of like your identity, isn't it? What you read, it's your identity. If it's got a cover that's attractive, you know, you kind of feel happier opening it up and reading it and letting other people see that you're reading it. Maybe at the same time, if you're into maybe being a bit old-fashioned, you know, if you're reading an older book, an older edition, that kind of makes a statement too. You know, we think about hipsters and maybe how hipsters choose their fashion based upon, you know, trying to have that edge or that look. What you read too kind of has that effect, you know. So I don't know, I definitely do. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't read a book because I didn't like its cover. But I will say that if I don't like the cover of a book, I'm more likely to read it in an electronic edition. So I guess maybe there is some sort of correlation between that, which is actually, okay, this isn't a question that is on our list of questions, but I think it's a good sort of midway point question. What book or books are you reading at the moment? And I ask because it kind of goes in with this judging books by their covers, because one of the articles I was quite interested that actually talked about this. It showed the cover of a book that I'm actually reading right now, which is this The Essex Serpent, which is this British author who has written this sort of kind of historical fiction fantasy book, and the cover is very interesting. It's got this serpent and it's green and it's very beautiful. It looks very interesting, very mysterious. And I am reading it in a digital edition, so I don't have the pleasure of, you know, having it on my coffee table and looking at it. But I can say that when I started reading this digital edition, it was on a device, an e-reading device that has a color screen. And it was quite nice to open and see that colorful cover. And since then, I've switched to reading it on a simple, like e-paper screen, so that it's black and white, no color. And I mean, the book is still good, but the cover isn't quite as nice. But anyway, I just thought we'll get into that kind of mid-conversation club question. What book are you reading now? Irina, can we start with you? What book are you reading right now?
Okay, I have finished reading a fiction book. It is about 3 women who are traveling around the USA. Oh, and there are a lot of love. There are a lot of I know some search of information. The other book is about childhood and the children. The children's development.
Okay, so like a reference sort of book in that sense.
Yes, it is about, the author of this book is Maria Montessori, and I'm learning this method and I'm reading this book. And there is another one. It is English book. The author is Cecilia Hearn. I like her. She's very easy to read and to relax reading books.
Okay, sorry, there's a delay there. That's a good selection, several there. And Elia, what about you? What book are you reading, or books are you reading at the moment?
I have started a book. It is called Zuleyha is Opening Her Eyes, something like that. Can it be translated, I think, into English? So this is a young writer. Her name is Guzel Yahina. So this is a novel about love, about surviving in difficult times. So it is about Tatar people and many other people, how they were surviving during Stalin times.
Yeah, good, interesting. These are in Russian, I take it. Elia?
Yes, it is in Russian. Yes,
Okay.
it is in Russian. In Russian, it is called Zuleyha открывает глаза, and
Okay.
I think that it can be translated like she is opening her eyes. I don't know.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, I like that. Translation. Denise, what about you? What are you reading at the moment?
I was on mute. So first, a month ago, I remember and start reading book That's All. This is a classic book. I can't remember if I read it at school time because it was a part of school program, but since I skip it on that time, and I find that not a good book for school education because there are many parallels and interesting point of view on human behavior that is hard to understand and I seen in young age. Also, in parallel, I read Adventure of Tom Sawyer on English, but it was not a good selection because there are many not often used words. Mark Twain language is quite archaic probably, but I still reading it. But I should to use dictionary much time even for on each pages. And also, as a part of my education, I read a book named A Perfect Code. It's about best practices of developing software. But it's a very long time reading. I read this book first time 10 years ago, and then read some materials from this book each year, every year. So it's infinity book. I can read it again and again and find some useful thing and interesting ideas for each time. So this is a book I read it now.
That's great. It's great that you have that. That's something you can go back to. But definitely a lot on your plate there too, on the bookshelf. A lot on your bookshelf there, Denise. Next question that we have is, how do you feel about paying money for a digital edition? Denise, how do you feel about that?
The same as paying for non-digital edition. To me, it's more harder to pay money for example, a bad maintained soft-covered book, which is really for one using, because it was broken after reading sometimes. So buying an ebook which is preserved somewhere in a cloud and you can download it on different devices, to me it's a good deal.
Okay. All right. So you're fine with it. Irina, what about you? How do you feel about paying for electronic books?
I doesn't mind. To pay for an electronic edition because it's okay. It is someone's job, and if I need it, I will pay for it. Of course, if there is no other free book, maybe.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. What is this? Nice to meet you. Bible for develop. Oh, Elia, do you want to clarify your question? Bible for developers?
No, I just mentioned that was comment about Denise's book, that very infinitive one.
Denise? Bible for developers?
Probably I skip questions. Can you repeat?
No, that was just my comment to that very
Oh.
book that you were reading.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't quite understand. We're going there. But yes. I mean, that's okay. Elia, what about you? How do you feel about paying for electronic books?
Yes, as Denise has already mentioned, it's a very good deal because usually ebooks are twice cheaper than print books. And if to take reading the books as the possibility of participating the information, taking in useful information, so I think it's a perfect way.
Okay, so you guys are all kind of for that. I don't know. I feel really weird paying for electronic books, as I mentioned before, because I want to feel something tangible in everything else. And when the digital edition costs as much as a paper book, I feel really, really strange doing that. I feel okay paying for a digital edition if it's at a reasonable price. And when you take into consideration how much it actually costs to make a digital edition, I think, it seems like it's fair to pay a couple of dollars for a digital book, but not $10 or $20 for a digital edition, which in some cases on some major platforms you see are the prices. So that's the same cost as the physical copy, which to me doesn't seem quite right. So I am okay with paying for a digital edition if it is at a reasonable price. And I think that a few dollars for a digital book is fair. And more than that, and I have paid much more than that. And like I say, I use a lot of these library borrowing digital books, and I really am satisfied with that option. And I hope that that's something that a lot more libraries implement, because it is a great service to have. It really is. And it's a public service. All right, the next question that we have is, what do you think when you see a lot of print books in a person's home? Start with Irina. Irina, what do you think when you see a lot of books in a person's home?
Actually, it's my dream to have a library in my own home. Yeah, I like it. Especially, I like English books, and especially for little children, because they cost a lot of money, and I sometimes buy a new books for my toddler, and no, they cost a lot. So, but they're so interesting, and they're so colorful, and I adore reading with him. And yes, it's my dream.
Okay, all right. Irina, I understand you. We've got lots and lots of children's books that I have too, which is, yeah. I know what you mean when it says it costs a lot. It costs a lot of money because there's always something new, but it's nice. It's nice to walk into your child's room and see what a huge library they have to select from and choose what they want to read. So I'm all for that. Although it does take up so much space. But what can you do? Denise, what do you think when you walk into someone's home and you see a lot of books?
Usually it depends on what books I see, because I have a dream to collect a library, some kind of small library with some important and interesting books for me. And also I had some kind of home library before I started to live in rent apartments, so it's hard to move big amount of books. But some people I know collect all books, so it's not a library, it's some kind of a simple set of different unlinked books with no ideas and no some selection.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of difference in that sort of thing. What about you, Elia? What do you think when you walk into someone's home and you see a lot of books?
I feel envy in the good sense of this word, because I admire um, seeing books, and if the person or people have good, beautiful, and classic library in their homes, that means that they're first of all respective people, I think, and actually it is treasure. So I think everyone feels first of all admiring the treasure.
Yes, definitely admiring that treasure. This is an interesting thing when you walk into someone's house and you see a lot of books, because I know a lot of different types of people. I know a lot of people who were pretty much academic in nature. And for academics, it's pretty much second nature to have a lot of books. Whether you travel or move around or not, you still have books. And it's basically, like we say, gold, right? Treasure, as you were mentioning, Elia. And they're willing to pay, fortunes to have them move from place to place depending on where they live. And I personally, well, it depends on where because I've moved so many times in the last, 15 years that it's really hard to keep track of. So I've collected a lot of books throughout the years, but also lost them. But anyway, getting back to what I feel when I see a lot of books in people's homes, I really enjoy it. I like to browse through their shelves and try to see what they're reading, what they feel that they want to display for themselves and for other people. I think it's a very interesting way to get to know a bit about a person. Again, it's kind of maybe judging them by the cover because, you know, like, is the person really in line with what they're reading? But it is very interesting to see that. And I really do appreciate it. And I know that in Russia, what I really liked was to go into people's homes, and more likely than not, people did have books out on display. You know, maybe they would be older books, you know, back from Soviet times when you had, not really a book club, but, you know, like when you had books that were able to buy, and I remember going through and you'd open them up and you'd see different publication cities, and it was always very interesting. It's like a piece of history. And again, just a lot of interesting information that's there and that was maybe read by people, was maybe not read by people, but in any case, they're still there, which is always very interesting because, you know, books are books. And yeah, definitely. And as Irina was mentioning with children's books too, when I see a lot of children's books, I think it's just wonderful, really, to have that sort of library and to promote that sort of love for reading, because yes, they're big. Yes, they take up a lot of space. Yes, they're heavy and expensive to move, but I think it's very valuable, like you were saying too, Edia. You know, very, very sense. Denise, did you answer this question?
It's about yes, seeing of lot a book.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just like kind of getting. It's difficult when we've got 4 people in here trying to keep track of all we do. I get like I'm making notes, but at the same time I'm making notes. I'm like, wait a minute, was this for this question or this question? But it's interesting. It's interesting to have 4 people and 4 different opinions. It definitely makes things move in a different way. The next question that we have, which is something I mentioned earlier in our conversation club, is would you take an e-reader to the beach or to the swimming pool or to a public place where you might leave it behind? Denise, you know, you say that you enjoy reading on e-readers from time to time, but you also mentioned, you know, maybe whether or not it's the best option at certain places. Would you feel comfortable taking it to that kind of a public place, or is that more like a home on your body sort of option? What do you think?
So yes, I took e-readers on the beach because usually I visit the beach in some travels because we have no beaches in Moscow, normal beaches. We have some lakes with small beaches, but it's not about not really a fun place. So one of the interesting experience of reading ebooks was reading I try to it's not translated. It was Iliada by Homer, Greek poetry. I read it in Greece on one of the island, and usually in a beach because at the time we travel on island and I have no much time, but on beach I have enough time to reading a book. And it was a great experience because reading some culture-specific books exactly on that place where it was written, where it was invented, it's a very good experience. So yes, and it's even more comfortable than alternative to bring few books on a vacation from Moscow to Greece.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Okay, that works. I mean, it is very convenient for traveling. What about you, Irina? Would you feel comfortable leaving some electronic device at the beach, you know, if you want to read?
Actually, I like reading at the parks, and I always take a book with me, and I like reading books in a cafe and somewhere else. But actually, now I'm thinking about taking a book with me to my holiday. We are going to go on holiday. No, maybe I will take only one and some books for my child because maybe I need to communicate more with my family these 10 days, during these 10 days now, and to relax. My brain is needed to relax. as I say it correctly. Sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. That's fine. It makes sense. Elia, what about you? What do you feel? How do you feel about using electronic devices at the beach for reading?
If to consider the certain place means a beach, I think that electronic book they will be very unuseful for me because there I should look after the children. So there is no use to take any books there with me. But last time when I took a book to the beach, it was a print book, and I think I wouldn't take ebook with me to the beach.
Okay, yeah, I feel the same way. But then it's also probably because I've seen so much on the beach. For example, people coming around selling sunglasses to people on the beach. I think, like, how strange. There's so many people selling sunglasses. They couldn't possibly be making money because I haven't seen anyone buy sunglasses on the beach. I mean, maybe they're looking to see if there's stuff to take. Maybe it's some sort of, I don't know, stealing scheme to steal e-readers and iPads and I don't know what else. But no, I mean, I think that when I go to the beach, honestly, I'm not going to sit out and read in general. I'll probably go inside and relax there because I don't want to get burnt by the sun. But even if I do read for whatever reason, I think I feel more comfortable reading a paper book at the beach than an e-reader, just because it could get wet or, like I said, stolen or maybe sand inside. I don't know. I had one e-reader that I accidentally threw not a rock on, but a flashlight on. And so I know how breakable, vulnerable they are. So I think I'd be very, very careful with any reading device in any sort of location like that. But that's just kind of like my personal experience and what have you. Next question that we have is, how often do you share books with friends? Irina, how often do you share books with friends?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Mama, to be honest, I think that nowadays it's not a problem to buy or to have to find some books, and we can send it by email. Yeah, no, but I think in general it's a good idea.
Yeah, no, it is. Definitely is. Ellie, what about you? How often do you share books with friends? Ellie, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, how often? Yeah.
I'm with you. So the question was about what? Because the pizza delivery was calling.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right, no worries, no worries. The question is, how often do you share books with friends?
Yes. Sometimes I share books with my friends. Usually they are novels about love and things like that. So yes, sometimes I share books, and the last book I shared with my friend, it was the book of Haruki Murakami. So that was a serious one. Yes.
Which one?
About sheep.
Oh, okay. Yes, this is a good one. It's an interesting book. Yes, I know which one you're talking about. Those are good books to share with others. All right. So, Denise, what about you? How often do you share books with your friends?
No, it's not often situation because I have a not so big set of books, but so it's a rather rare case. But previously, when I have a rather big library, yes, I often we change books sometimes, or I share some books. So yes.
Okay.
For pre-ebooks epoch, there was one of the simplest way to read new one-time books when you not plan to read it a few times. It's to buy sometimes and exchange books sometimes with other friends. Or it was an open case. But now with ebooks, it's not useful because some books are protected by DRM systems. You can't trade anyway, and some books are very easy to accessible, and it's
right. Definitely, definitely. Yeah, it is a bit of a different kind of arrangement in that sense.
Oh yes, now it's more about recommendations. I usually share my experience of reading some books.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's what brings me to have any of you guys use, what is it called? Goodreads? Anyone?
No.
No? It's this social network where basically, you can tie it into your e-reader and you can let your friends know what books you're reading, and you can rate books, and there's forum discussion, question and answer. Sometimes the authors of the books have their own pages and you can, communicate with them. It's quite an interesting thing. And, it's one of these modern sort of ways to share literature, which are interesting.
Thank you for advice. I will try. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
I hope.
Let me see if I can find mine. I can send it to you guys. Hang on.
Thank you.
I can find it. I can find this Goodreads. Goodreads. There you go. Where are you? Goodreads. But no, I mean, that's the sort of thing, sharing books. When I used to move, I would invite friends over to basically ask them if there's anything that they wanted, as I left wherever I was leaving. And usually books, I kind of just left a stack of books. I said, guys, here, books, take something. And, that was a way to kind of share books and what have you. And nowadays, not so much, probably because the children's books I hold on to for a number of reasons, just because I have other uses for them. And they've already been so many different places that I have a hard time just getting rid of them. But when it comes to sharing books, like I said, this Goodreads is, I think, a very interesting way to be able to share book suggestions with your friends. And it's, again, a modern sort of reality. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I've always been kind of protective of my books. So just sharing them for the sake of sharing them, I think I probably wouldn't have done. But yeah, it's still kind of interesting to share ideas and, like you say, recommendations and what have you. I'm trying to find this, you guys, but it's so slow. I don't know what is with the internet these days. But anyway, let's maybe just finish up our conversation club as I look for this link. The question is, what do you think the future will bring for, let's say, bring for reading? What do you think that the future will bring for reading? Denise, let's start with you. Oh, wait, hang on a second here, guys. Here's my Goodreads profile. There we go. All right. What do you think the future will bring for reading?
I think future is now, because it's all trends are existed now. So to my mind, price of ebooks will be decreased even for yellow page books, and also this can decrease market of one-time design books. So for one-time reading, people will choose, for most cases, ebooks, especially if e-readers will be more useful, comfortable, and probably in some cases even closer for traditional books. And of course, part of well-designed and good printed books will be exist, because books is a perfect artifact. It's some materialized mind, probably.
Yeah, interesting.
So, and now, yes, we already have such a situation. So,
okay.
Or if you, yes.
Yeah. Elia, what about you? What do you think the future will bring for books?
Yes, I absolutely agree with Denise that paper books will also exist, because they're really treasure. I don't know, because they bring some good feelings for the readers. But I think that the way of the future of reading will be concerning the speed of reading. I think that the speed of reading, the taking and participating the information will be faster and faster in future. So the way, the manner of reading will change, and maybe some days in future there will be some gadgets or some devices just connecting with our heads and um, pushing some information like computers do that. I don't know how, but I think it will be something like that.
Okay, definitely computers everywhere. Irina, what about you? What do you think that the future will bring for reading?
I watched the video on the TED Talks, and there man was presented a book of future, with live pictures. For example, when you open next page, you can see not just a picture, but a video. It's that sort of ebooks. And
Okay.
there will also мельница. I don't know how can I say it in English.
What is this?
Мельница. I will show you.
In context here.
Yeah. And he blows on it. Mill. He blows on the mill, and it gets a movement.
Oh, okay. Like, my goodness. Yeah, okay, I think I understand what you mean. Anyone have any ideas how to say this properly?
Interactive books.
Interactive?
There was a few attempts. I remember also Stephen King write a book which contains different sets of way how to combine chapters. And there is now there is many different ideas how to build interactive books with some video parts, or probably with some more deep interactions. I made books with about three-way: text, sound, and video at one time. But if text is a central way to provide a plot, it's still a book somehow. Probably something like this.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, interactive. That is the future, isn't it? Everything has to be interactive in one way or another. But yeah, that's a very interesting point. So thank you, Denise. And that's your sort of guess for the future, is it then, Irina?
Yeah, I think maybe there will be such sort of intellectual books.
Okay.
I think that print books will always be an important part of people's life.
Okay. All right, guys, how are we doing on time? Do we have, who else has predictions for the future? Any other predictions for the future? We have interactive stuff. We've got anything, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I can't predict the future. I'm kind of, I hope people keep on reading. But, I think that what we see with a lot of the new technology is that people have gotten, like you were talking about, videos and this interactive stuff. There are a lot more ways to obtain information. And this actually personally drives me crazy when there's a video to watch instead of a simple text to read. Me, I am very quick at reading and then processing that information. But I can read that quickly and then I can reference back to it. If I'm expected to watch, say, a 5 or 20-minute video, instead of reading something that would take me maybe 3 or 4 minutes to read and then be able to reference back to, if the need be, it's, for me, a very frustrating thing. However, I'm aware that this is the way that especially young people are learning how to learn. So I think we're going to see, like you were saying, a lot more of that, guys, of this sort of replacement of reading. And I really hope that people are able to hold on to the gift that is reading, because it's important and it's enjoyable, and fingers crossed it'll all work out. So anyway, everyone, thank you so much for this conversation club today. It was very interesting. Thank you. Any suggestions, you guys, for next time? Denise, you had a great suggestion for this one. Does anyone else have a suggestion, a topic suggestion? Irina, come on. You're on mute. Come on.
I'm new here because I would like to speak about everything.
I have an idea, but it's not shaped well. Probably we can discuss something about art, even contemporary art.
Like modern art. Okay.
Contemporary, modern art.
Yeah, contemporary modern art. That's an interesting topic. It can be controversial. All right. All right. Okay, you guys, modern art. That's a good one. I've got a suggestion then, okay? I want everyone, this is like homework for next lesson. In addition to the material that I will be giving you guys, I also want everyone to choose some sort of piece of modern art to share and discuss with the rest of us. All right, so be ready to find something and have a link so you can send it to us so that we can open them up. We're going to be interactive next conversation club. Okay, guys?
Okay.
Okay. All right, I'll write it down too so no one forgets, but I think that's a good idea. All right?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay,
Okay. All right, thank you everyone for this very interesting conversation club, and hope to hear you all next week. Same place, same time.
Yes.
All right.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much. Thank
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.